Welcome to the Liberty Show, where we talk about American classical education and invite you to join us in the work of forming knowledgeable, virtuous citizens. My name is Matthew Kirby. I'm the CEO of Liberty Classical Schools, and we exist to launch and operate K-12 American classical schools that emphasize virtuous living and traditional learning and civic responsibility. You can learn more about us at libertyclassicalschools.org. And today I have the opportunity to talk with one of our longstanding teachers, Mr. Garrett Holt. Mr. Garrett Holt is known by many folks in our school communities. He's been a teacher at Atlanta Classical Academy since our very first year. Today he serves as our Dean of Student Life for boys, and he's teaching history in the 11th grade and also the 7th grade. And Mr. Holt, he joined us in 2014, straight out of Hillsdale College, where he was a history professor. He spent 9 years as a 5th grade teacher before transitioning into the high school. Mr. Holt grew up as a military brat in Nebraska, and most of his family still lives there. He enjoys tea, hiking, camping, and Nebraska football, and would say that one of the best parts of his job is that he gets to teach in a school with many of his great friends, also his wife, and also his brother. And Mr. Holt was one of those guys that I got to know very early in our initiative. Went to a job fair in the spring before we launched Atlanta Classical back in 2014. And he was one of these gentlemen that folks at this job fair said, you got to meet Garrett Holt. He's a young man who's going to bring an incredible amount of energy to your campus, will get involved in virtually everything, and will apply himself to the art and the craft of teaching. And he has absolutely done that. He has matured and developed as a teacher and as a coach, and has been incredibly inspiring to many of our students and now to our teachers as well. And is a guy, I commented about him in our interview that if we had to do a contest of what teacher knew the name of every student who'd ever attended Atlanta Classical, and it's 12 plus years now, I think Mr. Holt would be the guy who probably could name every single student, which I think says a lot about him. He cares a lot about our kids. And is an excellent teacher in history. And I know you're going to enjoy my conversation with Mr. Garrett Holt. Garrett, thank you so much for doing this interview with us. I'm so excited to talk to you. Tell me, first of all, what are you teaching right now?
So right now I'm doing 11th grade and 7th grade U.S. history. So I do 2 sections of 11th grade and 1 section of 7th grade.
Yeah.
On the side I do Dean of Student Life for boys. So I kind of help out with some of the both culture building and reactive and proactive culture and discipline, as well as helping run events and kind of helping Mr. Nugent create systems for the school.
Yeah. And so pretty huge transition. You taught 5th grade for 9 years.
Yep.
And then moved into the high school or the upper school.
Yeah.
And what's that been like?
It's honestly, I think a lot of people have the idea that they come into the lower school and they're maybe waiting for an upper school position. They see it as some like a promotion almost. And I think at ACA, thankfully, we have a lot of people like Mr. Clausen or other people who span a lot of the grades, and Dr. KT. And so for me, it was like really, I described it as like a net zero gain. It's like I've really enjoyed both of them. It hasn't felt like one has been more enjoyable than the others. In fact, there's really great things about both of them. I always describe it as 5th grade is, I love the age of 5th grade. I think just at that age, they're smart enough to start asking really good questions, but they're still really earnest and eager. Like they're excited for school. They're excited to see the teacher. They're excited to talk about the books. In high school, it's a little, you're 11th grade. You're going through a little more emotionally, a little more angst. A few people are more jaded, but you get to have really
You're thinking a lot about what the people around you are thinking about.
Yes, probably. It's probably a 70-30 split between the people around you and the curriculum you're going through. But you get to have a deeper level of conversations, and you're so much closer to sending them out into the world. So it really feels like you're in a critical time there. But I've kind of described it to people as like in the lower school, you're kind of keeping the lid on a boiling pot at all times. There's just kind of something happening. It's like whack-a-mole with problems. It's like, this kid can't do it. This kid needs the help with this. You need to be quiet in the halls. Yeah. Whereas in the high school, most kids have it figured out. But then when there is a problem, it's one that it needs a lot more help and a lot more assistance there. Yeah. So I always tell people it's not necessarily, I think where you fit is not necessarily based on your knowledge of the content as much as it is what's going to drain you at the end of the day. Is it going to be that constant application of your energy at just keeping everything under control, or is it going to be those few students who you're really going to be thinking about a lot after school, who you're really going to be pouring a lot of your emotional energy into? But I've really found both of them to be incredibly rewarding in their own ways.
That's really insightful. Yeah, that's really, I totally understand that. So how do you think you have changed as a teacher? I mean, you've obviously moved to a new grade range, and you've mentioned some of the challenges there.
Yeah.
But how have you developed? How do you assess that?
I think so. I've been at ACA since the very beginning, and opening up a school, which now you do all the time now with Liberty, is a tiring thing to be there on ground zero or day one and trying to figure out things. Being there at the opening of ACA, a lot of it was trial and error, figuring things out. So I think people always talk about like year 3 of teaching is where you really find your groove. And I feel like so much of those first few years, it was like year 5, because we were kind of recording things like, oh, this was great, and I want to add this in. And part of that's my own personality of keeping, like, recording things and systematizing things. But I feel like for those first few years of lower school, it was just figuring out the rhythms of classroom. I mean, honestly, really, classroom management is one of the biggest ways that that just eats up so much of your time. I just got back from a job fair looking for new candidates for the school. And it's funny talking to them about, like, what do you think about classroom management? Because it's totally an abstract idea. Like, they have no idea. They know it's, oh, you should be firm with students. Like, what does that mean?
Right,
like,
right.
You don't know what happened, when the craziest things are happening, when someone zips their eyelid or zips their eyelid in their jacket, and someone else is yelling, throws up because of it, and now you're running across. Like, that's classroom management.
Right. They don't teach that in school.
No.
Yeah.
And so I think part of it is just you get to the point where I've described it as the first few years you're so aware of everything happening that it's really hard to enjoy really what's happening in the classroom. Like, there's so many beautiful moments, but you're just like, I got to get to the end of the day. I got to get to the end of this lecture. That as I think what I've just been able to, I think, as develop as a teacher, lesson plans come together easy. I can plan a little farther in advance. But I think one of the things that I feel like I've developed the most in is you have the ability to, you're not thinking about how you're going to respond to a situation anymore, that your toolbox is just more full of teaching strategies, of classroom management strategies. And I think just how I've hopefully evolved as a teacher is more joyful in the classroom, because you're not thinking about, am I doing these lists of things? It just kind of comes naturally. Now when this thing, I go in without having to think about the classroom management element, without having to think about how I'm going to teach this thing again. So I can just be there and enjoy, like, let us sit in the questions, even when it gets awkward, or I can enjoy this answer that's really going to take us into left field. But that's something that I'm not as worried in the background about. Am I going to get to where I thought I was going to get to? And sometimes that comes back to bite me if you go too far a tangent all the time. But I think I think if I had to summarize it, it's been able to enjoy being in the moment with the students, and see, and that just allows them to participate in the conversation more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you yourself went from 22 years old to 32 years old. Yep. I mean, and I can imagine that's a huge amount of maturity, and things kind of slow down and you get your arms around it.
Yeah.
Well, it's been really joyful to watch you do that. What are the elements of the 5th grade curriculum that were inspiring to you and then, interesting to the students?
Yeah. I found myself far more interested in so many of the subjects than I had initially thought I would be. I was a history major in college, and I knew I was really excited. In fact, when I was applying for the job, I really wanted a history job, but it was already filled. And so the principal at the time said, well, we have this spot for you if you're interested. And at the time, I said, sure, like, I wanted to be here. I knew several of the people who were going to be in Atlanta, including our principal, our current upper school principal at the time. And so I said, hey, that sounds like it. I want to be here with these people. I want to be here with friends. Sure, I'll take it. And so coming in, I knew I'd like history. I really enjoyed literature. I think the literature curriculum in the 5th grade is fantastic. But I found myself really enjoying math. As something that was if I was one of those people, if you asked me what kind of student I would say, like, something I tell the students not to say, like, don't say I'm not this disciplined student. And I would always say, I'm not a math guy. This is not who I am. But I just found that was one of the things that I enjoyed so much in being able to teach it. I think teach it classically, right? There's always the question, the $1 million question of, well, what does it mean to teach like science and math
Right.
classically? And I found that at that level in 5th grade, it was the most Socratic class I could have. We do solid shapes on the board. We'd have like some complex, like a rectangle with like a triangle on top. And you'd ask, okay, well, what's the volume of this? And then you could ask kids, well, you found it out this way. You broke the triangle and the rectangle and you found the formula. Can you find another way to divide this? What if this distance was actually this distance? What if we found how could you find the negative space here and subtract that? And then and this is like, one minor example, but I found so much more joy in the actual give and take of the class through teaching math than I had been prepared for. And I found myself, I understand math far better after teaching 9 years of 5th grade than I ever had before.
Yeah, great. That's awesome.
I remember at the beginning of the teaching 5th grade, we started off with we have the Singapore math curriculum, and so much of it's based around word problems. And after the common complaint, more lament from parents is, this is not the math that I learned, right? This is not because it's too progressive, but just because it's thinking in a way that is so pictorial and abstract. Right. And I was definitely the teacher in the first few weeks of school where I would look at a question that I had assigned for homework and say, does anybody who thinks they got this one? Let's see if you can do it. And I'm like, oh, thank you, so-and-so. I'm just taking notes down here as this 5th grader's doing this question here. But I got to the point where that was just something that was just so enlivening to me, to be able to think in these different ways and to really understand that a mathematical mind is a logical mind. And so that was one thing that really jumped out to me at the 5th grade curriculum, specifically the math of like the early stages of algebra, geometry I loved. And then the history curriculum is the width and breadth of human existence there. We basically would start out, when I tell people this, I get halfway through and I'm like, this is just first semester, don't worry, we still have more. It's, you start out with Mesoamerican civilizations, age of exploration, the Renaissance, feudal Japan, Russia, pre-revolution Russia, and that's first semester. And then you get into basically 1820 America through the Civil War. And so there's so much to cover there, and so much, it's so fun doing this, so much fun doing this with 5th graders who have never heard of these events before. By the time you get to high school, they're at least familiar with it, but you're just giving them the boxes for this. Like they don't know they've never heard Renaissance before. Right. And so when they hear it now, it's to watch them come into contact with the great conversation, really, because you're now starting to have conversations about, what does this mean? What does it mean? What is a humanist? What does this mean? What are they, when they talk about the dignity of man, what does that mean? It's no longer, hey, who was the first president? What battle was this? It is asking them the deep questions that are raised by these great moments in history. Yeah. And then the literature curriculum it's shifted a little bit. When I was doing it, we were doing the narrative life of Frederick Douglass. We were doing the adventures of Tom Sawyer, The Secret Garden. We do a Shakespeare every year. Wind in the Willows, one of my personal favorites. This is my wife always gets me a tie at the beginning of the year, and this is a Badger tie for Wind in the Willows.
Love it. Yeah, that's right.
But just the conversations you can have about those things are, I think, some of the best collection of books that you have at any one grade level.
Tom Sawyer, is that one of the 5th grade?
Yes, yeah, yep. Tom Sawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. You read that, and unlike The Secret Garden, which is a little more heavy-handed and didactic with its lessons, Tom Sawyer it just feels like real life when you're reading about the interaction of the girls and the boys in the schoolyard, and you're reading this, and there's some shot fired at the ridiculousness of a 10-year-old boy, and all the girls crack up, and then it's followed immediately by a shot at the ridiculousness of the girls, and all the boys start losing it. Because it's real. They're like, it's like he was watching us in the playground like this.
That's right.
So fantastic literature. I mean, all of the things. Yeah, 5th grade, very highly recommend to any potential people looking for lower school employment. It's a great age. Yeah, great grade.
Well, you did such a great job with it, and to have your level of energy and passion for what you're doing in the lower school, quite frankly, to have a man in the lower school is a super great thing.
Yeah.
So I know they were. sad to lose you in that area. But then you moved to high school. So maybe a little bit about the 11th grade for those who don't know. What is the crux of the 11th grade history curriculum?
So 11th grade, we do it all. We try to get off. The problem with American history is every year it gets longer, and we still have 1 year to teach.
But the
all
big
of
theme
it.
is American history.
Big theme is American
grade.
history. Yeah. So we start in kind of pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, kind of paint the picture before the arrival of Europeans. Talk briefly about the age of exploration. Again, a lot of that, thankfully, because we have an excellent curriculum that spirals on itself, we kind of just pick up right where they left off in 10th grade, or at least they have talked about the English Civil Wars. They've talked about the Protestant Reformation. So some of those things we can kind of hop right into. But yeah, so you get to go through the whole width and breadth of U.S. history.
Yeah, and then also, the audience may not know, we don't use textbooks. Mm-hmm. How have you built your curriculum? I mean, talk a little bit about the sources that you use.
Yeah, so most of my sources, this is actually a change when I worked on this a lot this summer, was we have a textbook as like background reading to kind of give them like
the narrative. Here's
what's happening here. It's small. It's 3 pages a night, 3 pages 3 times a night, or 3 times a week. But most of what we do is I have a primary document reader. In the past, we've had basically roughly 20 primary documents a semester. So every week you're doing one of the heavy hitters. You're reading all of, in the past, or parts of Up From Slavery, or you're reading George Washington's farewell address, or you are reading the Declaration of Independence, some of the
Federalist Papers,
the heavy hitters, and some of those actually government does. So you get it's great to be able to kind of space it out. But you're reading the really seminal works of American history. But this year, I really wanted. We still do those, but I created this new primary document reader for the first semester that was actually, I don't remember the exact number. It's like 120 documents, and some of them I kept in their entirety, but some of them I shortened, and a lot of it I wanted to expand the scope of what history was. There's a way that history becomes just these famous speeches. Like it's just, there is this political treatise about this that we remember, or some guy gave this inauguration address. But I wanted them to see that history is the ledgers from a store, to the letter from William Tecumseh Sherman to his brother during the Civil War, to a flyer posted around Boston after the Boston Massacre. History is not, I think there's a way that we envision, there's this one true narrative. History is handed down on high to us in the form of a textbook that has this exactly how it happened, and trying to get them to understand that we understand history because we are piecing together all of these different pictures and snapshots from the past that come from the president, as well as from the shop owner, that comes from people from all ranges that we have, that it's this intricate, complex web that we can only try to like pick little parts of. And that's where we do a lot of those. So I'll alternate most days having maybe a lecture about whatever the event we're doing. But even then I'll try to say, hey, let's start off with this. Let's turn to this page and we're going to look at this half-page document. What does this show us about the idea of popular sovereignty? How is this received in Kansas? And that is the core of how we do our history.
And at that level, a whole lot more Socratic discussion, I would assume. Or how does that come about?
Yeah, and history's a funny one because you have to find, because for so many of them, I always my wife used to teach literature at our school. We talked to her about how you're reading the Iliad, and I'd watch her class, and on the board is like, what is glory? And it's this very broad ranging thing that everyone can contribute. In history, when you're talking about how did popular sovereignty affect these people? You have big questions you can ask, but there's a little bit more of, I have to tell you what happened here.
Yeah.
And I think and maybe even back to your previous question, that's one way I feel like I've been growing, is trying to find those big questions that everyone can really jump into. So what is this? How does the idea of popular sovereignty, or how does this idea in the Gilded Age of like this new rise of urban politics, is this compatible with the Republican government? Like, is this compatible with the way things are created to work here? And that's the way you can really bring them in, because you need to do both skills, right? You need to be able to have the ability to analyze a text and to actually leave out your own opinion and say, what is this person telling me about this? And trying to get the kids to take them at face value and say, this person, it might seem weird to us, but this person probably meant what they said. And that is a skill of history I want them to know, is try to, as seemingly alien or even maybe repulsive as a view might be, not asking you to agree with it. I'm asking you to understand it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things I hope they can take away from it. And then once we do that, then we can have the big questions about, what does this mean to live in a society together with the introduction of this idea? And that's how you really have those bigger Socratic discussions in the history class.
That's great. So just to congratulate you, I did hear that Doug Lamov visited the school, got to visit you and see you teach, and then passed along a really incredible compliment about your teaching. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
I was honored. I think it was.
That's a guy that's been in a lot of classrooms.
I know. It was an honor to hear that. It was kind of a terrifying thing to hear that. I was like, oh man, I vaguely remember him being there, but I think it was just weird. To me, it was a lesson that I think I was just so scared that he was even in there to see this guy who's like, I've read your book. Like, you're a big deal. And had a lot of questions during that class, and I'm glad he enjoyed it, but I was honored to hear that.
Yeah, that's really, I think the quote was something to the effect of, it's the best or one of the best history lessons he'd ever observed. Yeah. So that's really incredible, Garrett. You. You should be very proud of that. Well, let's shift a little bit to culture. I want to ask you a little bit about sort of the culture of the faculty, first of all. Yeah. How would you sort of describe what our culture is and what we at least strive for within the school, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about how that impacts our students. But maybe just start with the kind of the faculty culture.
Yeah, the faculty culture is why I don't know what would have happened had I been at another school. Maybe I would have just fallen in love with teaching so much. But I just think the thing that makes Speak for Atlanta Classical is an amazing faculty of friends, and an amazing sense of unity, that we are in this really important task together. That's one thing that our head of school and principals do an amazing job of, is we're not here. Like, what we're doing is we're shaping souls, and we're all in this work together. We're not just creating. The goal is to create students who are knowledgeable in mind and in spirit, right? To be able to create virtuous souls as well as knowledgeable citizens. And I think that extra element of being able to push us toward, right? It's important that we are knowledgeable in content, right? But it's also it's just so much more rewarding to know that through the content that we teach, also what we're doing is we're creating students who hopefully fundamentally will be different for their time at ACA, no matter what background they come from. Some, I think, materially, by going to ACA, their lives will be radically changed, and some maybe material, maybe because of their family, maybe they could have gone to another school in the area and done well, got into a good college. But I like to think that their view on the world and the way they experience others and their own life will be different because of that. And I think that brings the faculty together. A lot of us, with lack of cliche, it's like we see each other on the weekends. We do stuff after school. Like during the breaks, we find each other to sit on the veranda together and talk. And it's not just gossip or complaining. In fact, that's hardly ever what it is. It's like, if there's a student who is causing problems, it's usually like, oh my goodness, we love this kid. We know he's capable of so much more. Like that is the conversations that we have. And it's just the ability. And I think having that culture where we are all united toward this goal of improving our I think our music teacher at the school, Mr. Franklin, says this so well. He's like, I have been shaped and improved by this education. And I think everyone at ACA, hopefully faculty, can say the same, is that it is an amazing faculty. And I think that truly bleeds into the student culture, is that they see the way adults behave together. Or they should, that we care for each other, and that this is the way you interact with each other that is encouraging. It's not, just the way you interact as a 14-year-old boy is you just make fun of each other, right? And say, hey, maybe at some point you should grow past this, right?
Right.
But I think it's that, I think, I can't remember the exact, I'm quoting this stat here, and I think it was actually, can't remember where I got it from, but two stories that stick out to me was, like someone said that the number one indicator of, I think it was like SAT score, ACT score, was, does the child have dinner with their family each night? And another one of like in a similar vein of the passing down information culture was like, I think it was in terms of religion, like if your child will stay in the faith that you grew up in, the number one indicator of that is, do they have an older member, or an older family friend that they are close with. And I just think hopefully we can provide those things for our students, both that we're doing life together. We're sitting at them with lunch. We are having those meals together with them. We're asking about more than just their grades. And we're also those in a society that is starved of intergenerational connections. Hopefully we can be that for them, to provide a window into something a little bit beyond where they currently are.
Yeah. Well, that's right. So I want to ask you a little bit about kind of going way back. I had the pleasure of meeting you when we were hiring initially back, I guess that was like probably spring of 2014.
Yeah.
And you and a handful of your classmates from Hillsdale College came to us. And it seems to me there was a high degree of intentionality to build your lives around one another. I'm curious, sort of how conscious were you all of that? You all were all, seniors in college, 22 years old, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, was that a thoughtful, calculated maneuver, or did it just kind of work out that way? And I mean, maybe give advice to some college students who are thinking about, their career selection. Maybe they're moving into teaching, or maybe not. But how was that decision sort of paid off for you?
To answer the first part of that, it was very, very conscious decision. I think, as most 22-year-olds do, when I was looking up, I didn't know that I wanted to teach until that job fair where I had walked around and started to talk about education, and realized this animates me so much. I just gone to like a local job fair that was just for local businesses in the area the week before, and I had fun talking to people, but it was like, okay, well, this is the next step in my life, and this just kind of provided a alternative direction that I had not foreseen. I mean, I think in the back of my mind, everyone always says, "Oh, you're a history major, you're probably going to teach," and I said, maybe we'll see what happens. It is what happened, so and I think I was looking around, and because it was at that Hillsdale job fair, there's schools around the country, and I remember I was looking at some places that would have been out west or in the mountains, and I was like, oh, that'd be really cool. And I remember knowing that several of my friends were moving down to Atlanta, and that was not on my radar as a place I wanted to go. I'm from Nebraska originally, and I remember going to talk to one of my professors, and who I really trusted and respected, and I said, hey, here's my choices. Like, what would you do in this? And he goes, I mean, can't tell you to live your life, but go with your friends. Like, mountains are cool, but they're gonna last you if you'll go on some hikes and you'll have some fun for a little bit, and then you got to go home,
right?
And then you have to like do life.
Right.
And why not do that with the people you care about and love? And I think that conscious decision to do that and has been one of the best decisions I've ever made, I think, to be here and to have a community that has been, I think, what I've loved about ACA is that it started out as some friends, then it grew into the whole school of ACA, and now it just keeps, I feel like that circle just keeps expanding and bringing people into it. And that's something that I hope I can send out to our students. It started years back. It was one Sunday before I had the it's like a case of the Sunday scaries. You're getting ready for the day, and you're like, oh gosh, we have a whole week ahead of us. And my friends and I, we just made a bunch of I love instrumental bluegrass music. We just played a bunch of bluegrass music, lit a bunch of candles, sat there with a cup of tea, and just relaxed. And it turned into this big event that we have like a monthly called Tea Time. And we just invite anybody, my college friends, great aunt, former students, like parents of the school, friends, like everybody. And sometimes you have 6 people, sometimes you have 30 people. But what ended up happening is one of our students who graduated started doing that with all of her college friends. And that was one of those beautiful moments of like, this is why we're here doing this. This is why we're creating this community. And that's like when, in so many ways it's paid off, and it's been meaningful of why we're here together as a school and as a community here. But yeah, I think I would recommend to any person looking for it, like, go where you have connection. Experiences are going to be really fun for a little bit, but what's going to actually give you meaning and really satisfy a deeper longing is a sense of community and being loved and being known. And that can happen in places that you might not have really thought you would, right? Or thought you'd find it. And so that'd be my recommendation. Like, it's cool to see the world, and that's great, but that's going to make up a lot smaller of your time than the day-to-day lived experience with knowing you have people for you.
Well, and in your case, you found a wife.
Mm-hmm. That was also a bonus.
And now you've moved into fatherhood.
Yep.
How do you think, how's that changed you?
It's just made me a lot more content and grounded.
Yeah.
My wife and I always make we like. My wife is a foodie. She's an excellent chef. I am a foodie by proxy. I enjoy good food, and so we always joked that we had the classic, I forget which generation we are, millennial problem, but of like, we live in Atlanta. Do we go to what do we do on a Friday night? Do we go to the new Michelin star restaurant, or this one has a James Beard semifinalist? And we're like, pulling our hair at this decision.
Tough one.
And it's like, oh no, it's nice that we moved to a house up in Marietta, and it's like, oh, it's a lot quieter up here. We have the local Mexican place, the local pizza place, the local burger, and it's just quiet to you because you want to be here with the family and your son. And so I think if anything, it's all these things that were kind of pulling at my attention. I just want to be home, and I just want to be in a slow pace of life, and I want to see him and my wife, and it's just want to sit there and watch him try to eat a bowl of oatmeal, which is immensely entertaining right now. So, but I think it's just slowed me down a lot, which for those of you who have known me for a while, that is one thing that I've needed for a long time. So.
Well, I'm sure you have needed it, but I tell you what, the kids at our school and our school has benefited from your energy and has benefited from your engagement in anything and everything
thank you.
Around the school. I think that is probably that faculty of friends you mentioned earlier. A lot of y'all were like that. Obviously, few of you were married right away, and the freedom of being young and single was a huge advantage to our students, and so maybe it's time to pass that torch a little bit. Good thing to kind of bring in some less experienced teachers who can pour themselves into every moment and every event. All that's super positive too. So, well, speaking of extracurricular activities, coaching is a big part of your life. Tell us about your program, your soccer program.
Yeah.
How's that going?
One of my wife always has to remind me that I have a stipend to coach and I have a salary to teach, because during soccer season I get a little one-track mind.
Yeah.
Coaching has become just one of I hate to use the word. I think the word craft, people talking about their craft is overused, but that is the thing where I feel like having it is really, I don't have many handy skills. I don't create things with my hands, but for me, it's the opportunity to create something and watch it play out. So I've been coaching the girls varsity team. I'd coached the middle school boys and the boys team previously. But then I took over for the girls varsity team back in 2020. First season was COVID season, so we had a short little run there. And then had the absolute joy of being able to coach the team to a state championship the next year, as your daughter on the team.
That's right.
An amazing experience. And then we've somehow, just because we've had, just the girls at ACA are amazing. Like, it is. The culture is something that my brother is the assistant coach, has been the assistant coach for the past 6 years as well. And it just has a really familial feel. And I think, maybe that's the theme of ACA is it's a familial feel. Yeah. And a lot of these kids are sisters of the girls that I taught. And there's just few things I look forward to on a beautiful spring day than getting to go outside, run around, play the sport. But it's such an amazing... People always talk about, like, would you ever want to like coach like the local club team? And I don't think I would, because it's not with people that I know. Like, I don't enjoy just coaching in a nutshell, like just in a vacuum.
Yeah, in a vacuum. Yeah.
Like I enjoy coaching the girls that I taught in 5th grade, and then I taught again in 11th grade. And it's the ability to, I think part of it, I mean, I think we live in an age where we're kind of scared of ambition and striving. It's like, we're here to win. Like, I think one of my goals of the program is that we're perennial contenders for the state title. But that is like at the background of what happens. That happens because the girls learn to take what they learn at our school in the classrooms, and now you have to apply what it means to be courteous to the girl you're fighting against on the field who is anything but, and you have to use self-control. You have to be the one to hold your friends accountable, which is part of the hardest people to hold accountable. It's easy to hold other people you don't like accountable, but now these are your friends who you know, and you've known for 11 years on the field. So just the opportunity to watch some of these young women grow in character, in confidence, in leadership. And I think most importantly, I think so much of the generation in high school right now is really afraid to give themselves to something fully, really, really scared to commit to something fully. They have all these options out in front of them, and they want to be part of this club and this club and this, they want to do this and this and this. And right, every decision to do something is a decision not to do something else. And I think we've been blessed to have some amazing leaders on the team who are role models for the younger girls and say, this is what it looks like to give yourself to something. This is what it looks like to give yourself to Class A Division II soccer. And it's, why it's important? It's important because we're doing it. It's important because this is our life, right? I think when we think about so many kids, like talking in middle school, like quit the sport because they go, I'm not gonna play in college. Well, why? Who cares? You're gonna play in high school with your friends. Like, this is important because it's your life.
Yeah.
And the memories that we have of just like the memories and the relationship that you have from that. I mean, I had coffee with 2 former players over Christmas break, and that's something that happens. I see, that goes across the school from just former students to players. But I hope that from the soccer team, what I enjoy so much of is that I hope that these girls truly are young women who are more sure of themselves, confident, able to handle conflict, able to persevere, and able to love something enough to give yourself something fully toward it, even if you're going to lose in the end, right? And I think sports are a weird thing. Only one team leaves the season happy, and everyone else gets sad. And it's like, well, why?
Game, right?
Logically, why do we do this? Like we're setting ourselves up statistically to be hurt, but it's worth giving yourself to something, and it's worth having to experience that and teach them at a young age that this is part of this is just part of the human experience, and you learn this in a microcosm around people who love you on the field. And love the program, love being able to coach.
That's awesome. All right, I want to ask you to pan out a little bit and speak generally about the mission of an American classical school. If you had to address a group of parents who were evaluating one of the Atlanta Classical or Northwest Classical or Cherokee Classical or one of Liberty schools and our American classical mission, how would you describe what it is we're attempting to do and what sets the school apart?
Yeah, I think the title of my reader is Ben Franklin's famous quote, "A republic if you can keep it," and I try to hit on. I do this especially with the 7th grade curriculum. Is really, really trying to zero in on this of what maintains the civilization society we have is not the big acts and legislation of government per se. It is the individual virtue and responsibility of every single person in this room. And I think today it's so important because it gives them, it shows them that there are, like, when so many of the intermediary institutions of like various clubs or faiths that people used to have to kind of provide like meaning in their lives, with those gone, people just skip that step that's supposed to be like the local community step of your local social club, your garden club, your bowling league, and it just goes, well, all my focus is now going to national politics. And we miss something really important there. And I hope one thing they get from that is that this is a disordered love to have this as, like, this is important. We need to pay attention to that. But what really matters is how you keep your whatever community you find yourself a part of, how do you give yourself to that and practice, small R Republican ideals of self-government, of community, of giving, of helping the people around you who need it. We just talked about the Gilded Age and how the rise of urbanization, how before people would have little walking cities where you'd have to you knew everyone in the town. You'd the poor and the rich would live right next to each other. So the person who was the beggar on the street was the person you walked by every day and you knew them, and that these charitable organizations helped take that over and now take over things like orphanages and hospitals. And now we live in a time where that's not the case, where it's separated, and that kind of refocusing the kids who are told, you need to care about, like, just the culture, care about these big idea things that you really can't do anything about other than repost or retweet. Care about that. It's like, no, what can we actually care about? It is the local things and each other. I think I had a professor, I can't remember, I'm sure this is a common image, but of like your mind is like, it's a room, and what are you furnishing the walls of your mind with? Yeah. And you are being shaped by what you do, right? You are being, your life is creating habits and rhythms, whether you are choosing them or not. And I think that what we do at a classical school is we tell the kids, like, you have, like, these are beautiful pictures we want hanging on. These are the speeches from Abraham Lincoln. I want to be just a part of the fabric of your being. And these are things that you're not going, like a picture on the wall, you're not thinking about all the time, but it's there and it's a part of your imagination. And in weird moments, it's going to pop up and you're going to remember this thing. And I also think, just historically, one of my favorite lessons that I get to do is it's over the Boston Massacre. And it's not because Boston Massacre is like, it's maybe, and it has an outsized place in American history. But what I love to get to teach them is they all come in with the idea of like, oh yes, of course we know this. The dirty British shot at the innocent Americans, and the rest is history. And what I do is I give them 7 different accounts from the trial, and say, here's this very obviously pro-British person, here's this pro-American, and we look at the different literature that's passed around the town, and we get to realize that, oh, wait a minute, like, there's a lot more going on here. Maybe these weren't just regular snowballs that were being thrown by young boys. Maybe this might have been a mob. And you get this idea that, oh, there's a lot more to this than I had known. And one of the kids always at the end of each class asks, wait, so Mr. what really did happen in the Boston Massacre? And you could tell them, you know just as well as anyone who's ever studied it. Yeah. Because you have all the sources here. And they're like, wait, so if like this, like, what other things do we not? And they realize, this is all history. This is all history. Is like, you guys have to do the work of being thoughtful. And you have to, you can't just take what's given to you, that every event today, 300 years ago, is like this. It's made up of other people's account. There's no one true story that was passed down to the Wikipedia page that we now can just go look on and figure it out. And so, yeah, I hope there's a lot of things there, but I think the ideas of being able to recognize there's a lot of viewpoints and history is nuanced, being able to recognize that your personal individual contributions to your community is what really sustains America. And I think even to give them a sense that it's beautiful. History is beautiful. There's Chesterton says something along the lines of like, a madman isn't someone who's lost all reason. They've lost everything but reason. And I think in our world today, everything just becomes this dry, dissected, atomized, analytical mindset, and it just becomes the only lens we view things. And like everything, so many decisions are made by, this is logical, this is rational. It's like, well, that's a lens to view the world. There's also the lens of experience, and there's also what I think classical education and does is it holds in tension the empirical and the transcendent, and both of these things are true and come together. And to ignore one of them is to not be fully human, and to ignore one of them is to have an incomplete view of the world. And I want them to look at what history is made up of, these moments that they come together where this thing seems really logical, but something doesn't sit right with me. And maybe that's okay. Maybe we can't just ignore that. Maybe we should say, yeah, this thing doesn't make sense. Like, how it doesn't maybe make sense that I love going to the Kennesaw battlefield, to the Illinois monument, and you see the point where I think it was Colonel McCook stands up before he charges his final charge and says, you know, to every man upon this earth death cometh sooner or late. How can man die better than facing fearful odds, you know, for the ashes of his father and the temple of his gods? That doesn't make sense. And he charges in and he dies. And like, how do we create young men and women like that can do that have these images in their mind that this is important and this is going to possibly obviously we don't in their lives like that, but right, Lord willing, but to create children with these moral imaginations that have these poems ringing in the back of their head at these moments that require true virtue. And I think just hopefully that with the curriculum we have at ACA and any of these classical schools, it spirals, it builds, it unconsciously adds a painting here and there. And then when they're adults, in ways they don't even recognize, they have been shaped to be someone that is more than they thought they were. So.
Yeah. Beautifully stated. Yeah. That was really awesome. Thank you. All right, you ready to finish with a little short answer round?
Sure. Lightning round. Let's go.
Doesn't have to be super lightning, but maybe shorter. So a teacher that's had a really profound impact on you personally.
One that jumps to mind is Dr. Gaetano, my history professor at Hillsdale. Just was so excited about everything that he would teach. He would cry when he read certain things. He'd ask you really just thoughtful questions that made you reading through. I think going into Hillsdale, I had received a really good public education. I do not want to frown upon it in any way, but it was aiming at something different. And I think coming to Hillsdale and recognizing, this isn't just harder. This is a categorically different way I'm supposed to use my mind to ask. I'm asking really big questions and thinking about my role in the world on a cosmic level in ways I hadn't before. And I think Dr. Gaetano is one who I loved, who I think really made a big impact there just by how much the types of questions he asked about. It was a Reformation history class that I took and loved, and just even remember him reading he was Catholic himself, but crying as he read a Luther Christmas sermon.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, this is really important to you. This should really be important to me, too.
Yeah.
So,
awesome. Okay, great. Know you're busy these days, especially with a young family, but a favorite hobby outside of school?
When I have time, I really enjoy gardening. We just moved into a house in September, so we didn't have time to get stuff in, but we're just starting to get that up. I really love hiking. Getting into the mountains is just one of my favorite things. Place. It's just every day and every weekend in the spring or fall, I'm just kind of checking my to-do list. Can I get up there? Can I just go for a little bit of a hike? Those are the two that jump out the most. That's where I like to spend my time.
That's great. Let's say classical or historical figure that has meant a lot to you.
That's a great question. And by classical, do you mean just even literary?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am going to say The Lord of the Rings are my favorite books of all time, and have been since I was a little kid. And I don't even know if I can pick one. I mean, the movies do Frodo dirty. Frodo is a noble character in the books, and in the movie, he's kind of the whiny one, and Sam's the courageous one. But I think in terms of, I have to, maybe it's an easy answer to pick the main character of that book, but I love The Lord of the Rings. I read them every year. I recently unearthed my old Lord of the Rings encyclopedia that I made when I was 12 years old with all the maps and everything in it that I hand drew. So I was
man, you were into it.
Really deep in, yes.
Okay, awesome. I didn't know that about you.
Yep.
That's awesome. Okay, in this age of distraction, where we've got digital messaging coming at us from every which direction, screens and so forth, how are you managing that?
Trying, not exactly succeeding on all levels. There's several things. Actually, we're working. We just had the February freeze at ACA, so I was actually working with the soccer team. What are the things we can do to limit this?
What's the February freeze?
Every February, actually started by Mrs. Boyd, our school counselor, and she has got this big movement together, has had a speaker come in where we just try to limit screen time, where we have different challenges the students can partake in, whether it can be deleting social media for the whole month, or it can be limiting screen time. And there's several different ways they can do that, or they can do all three of them, preferably. But the idea is that I think Jonathan Haidt talks about the fact that it's hard to do by yourself, but if you have everybody doing it and pushing you, and now you're not as worried about you're the only one in the group not receiving these texts, it's a little easier to do that. So we do that as a school community. So this is fresh in my mind right now, but little things like I try to put all of my apps into like just one giant box, so I just can't scroll through and check them. I don't have social media. One of the most helpful things I've actually found is that the phone just kind of opens when you turn it over, it just turns on, or if you touch the screen. I can't remember exactly how to do it, but you have to click the side button to light up the screen.
Oh yeah.
And I find there's so many ways where it's sitting there. I'll just tap it. I don't even need to. I'm just
it's just there.
Just compulsively do that. So that's been one that has been really helpful. It makes me think about it. It's no longer just lighting up the second I look at it or walk by. I have to think through. So.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah. All right. A word perhaps to aspiring teachers. How can an aspiring teacher make the most out of their college or university experience to get ready?
I think number one is genuinely care about your subject. I think we talk all the time. We want content experts at these schools. Like, we want you to know what you're talking about. Nothing is going to enliven the mind of a student like someone who knows the subject, who can answer their questions, who can take it a step further than where they even thought they were going with it. That being said, also find a way to get involved in some teaching. I think, I don't know how it works at every college, but I know at Hillsdale where I went, they have an apprenticeship where you can go sit in classrooms. But I think there's two types of people who think they like the idea of teaching, and they want to talk about books, and they really love the Iliad. But then they get somewhere and they're like, I don't actually like being in front of students. Like, this is actually, this isn't just this isn't Dead Poet Society where I sit up and read a book and everyone is magically moved. This is a lot of other things that go on in a classroom that you have to take care of. And also on the flip side of that is, you might know every pedagogical tool there is, but if you don't know the content, you're going to find out pretty quickly you will be bored just sitting there reading through just the step-by-step thing if that's all you have, a step-by-step curriculum if that's all you have. You need to know it, and that's going to it goes both ways. Like, you have to find life in it too, and when you find life in it, the students find life in it. So you need to be able to know it, but you also need to know, like, teaching is more than just the transmission of knowledge. It is as we've talked about so much, it is giving yourself to the students in a way that you, like, in the true sense of the term, love them. You desire their good. Like, you desire their good at the end of the day, no matter, sometimes it looks hard, but you desire that you're not just going to give up on, you're going to keep pushing through with them. And that is sometimes hard for people who just think, I get to talk about my favorite subject all day.
Yeah. Well, Garrett, thank you for doing this interview with me. I think our audience is going to love hearing from you. And I just want to thank you for your service to our schools after all these years. Yeah. I very distinctly remember being at that job fair in 2014 and just sort of asking around of, who should we be talking up here? and almost to a person, they were like, you got to meet Garrett Holt. You want him at your school. Yeah. That's a young man who's going to pour himself into this thing 1,000%. And you absolutely did that. It's been really a part of the joy of my professional life to kind of watch you develop and watch you come to maturity as you have. I don't mean that in any kind of patronizing way. I mean, you have really come into your own here and are having an incredible impact on kids and families and other teachers. And at this point, you're a teacher of teachers, and it's an awesome thing to watch. And then you do it with such humility and such fun. We didn't quite get into it, and maybe I'll ask you a question in a second that we'll try to capture if you're willing to tell the story. But you've had a great time doing it, and you've brought levity and laughs and fun and joy. I was thinking about you. I bet you that if we had a contest of who could name every student who has ever attended Atlanta Classical Academy, my bet would be on you. That you could name every single one of them, or maybe
hopefully get close,
or maybe really, really close. And at this point, that would be thousands of kids. But I just think that speaks to your love of kids and your love of this mission. And I just want to thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been so much fun.
Yeah. All right, the thing I want to ask you to tell, perhaps, if you're willing, tell us the story of a VHS player.
So, wow, this is again what I think makes ACA great is like we are very classical, but also in a very informal way. It's not your stuffy like just absolute rigor is the only thing that matters. I don't know how we stumbled across this, but Mr. Sheps was the current upper school principal, was a good friend of mine in college, and he was teaching, I think, 8th grade literature. And I don't even know. We had some joke with each other, and I'd kind of been short with him in some conversation. It was something between we had totally a joke. But some of the kids picked up on this, and they said, "Mr. Sheps, you and Mr. Holt growing apart?" And he was like about to say, yeah, obviously not. And then he goes, "We could run with this." He goes, "I don't really want to talk about it." And so it's like, okay, wow.
This is the 8th grade
students? The 8th grade boys. Yeah, he's like, "I don't want to talk about it with you." And so we played the long game here. So for the course of the next like 4 or 5 weeks, every interaction we had just got a little bit more tense. It was very public. Like we walking through the hall, saying hi to the students. We just see each other, and I just kind of like peel off to the left and ignore him. He'd be sitting at lunch. I'd go sit down at the table, or he would be there with a bunch of students. I'd sit down. He'd just get up and leave. And somehow we came upon the idea of this VHS player. And so I don't know how this started, but
this is 15 years after VHS players.
They didn't know what a VHS. They didn't know what VHS players were. Not a clue. And so I think I asked him, he kept saying, "Mr. Holt, when are you going to give me back my Remember the Titans VHS tape?" And I told you, I just need a little more time. I haven't got a chance to watch it yet. I got halfway through, and this was the story that I had this VHS tape. So either way, builds up and builds. The kids are getting really concerned at this point because who are seemingly good friends, have now really grown apart. So it got to the point after weeks of this. This is back before we even had really any locker room. We still don't have locker rooms. We still had less of a plan for it. Like the boys all go into one room, get changed for PE, and I was walking by there. They're about to get changed, and Mr. Sheps yells at me, and he goes, "Hey, Holt, you got my VHS player?" And I said, "You want your VHS player? Fine, I'll go get your VHS player." And so I run down to the room. I bring up this $5 VHS that I bought at Goodwill, and I walk into the middle of it. And I go, "You want your VHS player? Here it is." And I unscrewed all the bolts that I could and just threw it on the ground and smashed it. And just the kids were just dead silent. And I just storm out. And all the kids like, "Fight! And then around and Sheps goes, "No, we're going to be the bigger man here." And then later that day, a couple kids found me, and he didn't tell them anything. And the next day, or later that day, some of the kids found me, and they're like, "Hey, was that thing you, Mr. Sheps? That was a joke." And I was like, "Don't you dare talk to me about Mr. Sheps." And I walked off. And so our principal, we get an email from our principal the next day, and he calls us down, and he goes, "What the heck happened in that classroom?" and we're sitting there next to each other, just kind of chilling out. And he goes, "Oh, it was a joke. We was making it was." Just like this audible sigh and melt
from some parents,
multiple parent emails who had said, "Dear Mr. Lambert, we should please make sure teachers keep their personal problems out of the classroom." And then we had bought matching ties at Goodwill the day before I found a pair, so we got pictures of each other in these matching ties, like still friends. Post them around school, and
that's awesome.
That was it. So,
I love it. Well,
it's
kind of cliche to say that we take our work seriously, but don't take ourselves too seriously. But truly, that is what you guys do.
Yep.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby.
This has been great. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, happy to.
Okay. See ya.